Hello and welcome to episode 73 of the Law Ninja Choke MMA Picks podcast. Today I'm joined by Josh in Australia. I'm Dom, I'm based in the US, and we're going to be breaking down some of the fights on the upcoming UFC card taking place this weekend in Sacramento. So we are going to talk about the fights outlined in red, and we've got some exclamation marks on screen. Josh, why don't you talk us through those?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I could probably put like an exclamation mark on every fight here because it's so topsy-turvy. But let's start with the Judice Chavez fight. Judice is like a minus multiple hundred kind of money line fighter, and that raised a few alarm bells for me because frankly, when you look at Chavez and her style, I can't help but see Judice like suffering from some big shots or visually looking like the one being bullied in the cage, and that usually indicates to the judges that maybe Chavez wins that round or whatever, because obviously the bigger punches hit. Now Judice is rightfully a favorite though because she's got the speed and technical prowess to kind of get the job done, but again, power is the great equalizer, and Chavez certainly has that. So that's why I kind of highlighted that. And Nzechukwu versus Gaziev is a goofy fucking fight. I don't like Nzechukwu at all as a fighter. He does come from Fortis MMA, and whenever a fighter comes from Saif Saeed's gym, you just know that they're in deep shit because he starts yelling, he starts screaming, and if a fighter doesn't really comply or do what Saif Saeed tells him to do, boy, you can hear him from a mile away. So I feel like Nzechukwu, he concerns me, but again, on the flip side, because he is the slight underdog here, his striking is much better than Gaziev's, and that's where it is really. He's taller, he's longer, he's more athletic, and he's also much more diverse in the feet. And for as long as this fight remains standing and at striking range, you can't count Kennedy out at all, even though I picked Gaziev to win this week, so I'm a bit conflicted there. And then finally, Schultz versus McVeigh. What a clumsy ass fight that is. Both fighters don't really have a long history in the UFC. McVeigh is a bit of a forgettable fighter, and so is Schultz, but ultimately this fight comes down to striking versus grappling. McVeigh being the striker, Schultz being the grappler, BJJ specialist, which is why the mark is there, because Schultz could potentially win by submission, but frankly, who knows? I struggled to kind of get a read in this fight. I mean, I have a weird angle in which McVeigh catches Schultz in a guillotine or a front headlock choke upon Schultz trying to get a takedown, so maybe that'll happen, but really, who knows? So that's a 50-50 kind of fight also for me. But yeah, this entire card is a interesting one. Each fight has a story. Each fighter has a way to win, and as a predictor, that makes me nervous because I like to have a clean victor. You know what I mean? Like an obvious winner, and here it's hard to find one. So yeah.
Yeah, I think there are some fights here also where the odds are probably quite wide, and we'll talk about those later. In the meantime, though, let's go straight into the main event in the middleweight division. Anthony Fluffy Hernandez takes on Gregory Robocop Rodrigues, or maybe it's Gregory Hobocop Rodrigues since he's Brazilian. Anthony Hernandez needs very little introduction. He's been in the UFC quite a while. He unfortunately lost his last fight to the middleweight champion, Sean Strickland. Before that, he was on an 8-fight winning streak in the middleweight division, tearing through all his opponents, being some pretty decent competition. Gregory Rodrigues, on the other hand, has had a kind of like up and down career in the UFC. At least when he started, he was sort of going a couple of wins and then a loss, couple of wins and then a loss. However, recently he's on a 3-fight winning streak and looked mightily impressive. You can see on screen he's the more physically well-built of the two fighters. Anthony Hernandez is one of these deceptive guys who's a bit fluffy around the midriff, yet he's an incredible fighter with an incredible gas tank. And yeah, it's a tale of probably two halves of the fight here. I mean, imagine Gregory Rodrigues is going to look really good early on. He's never fought in a 5-round main event in the UFC. Actually, I don't think that's strictly true. I think he's fought against Jared Cannonier. Apologies, he's fought one main event before, in which he was finished in round 4 by Jared Cannonier. That was his last loss, incidentally. Hernandez, on the other hand, is known for his cardio. He has fought 5 rounds before. He fought 5 rounds against Michel Pereira, finishing him in the 5th round. He fought 5 rounds against Roman Dolidze, finishing him in the 4th round. So Fluffy is someone who builds as the fight goes on. He chains a lot of takedowns together. He likes to wear on his opponents, stick to them like glue. And that's generally what we've seen him doing most of his UFC career. And it was very weird to see him not shoot a single takedown against Sean Strickland. That was remarkably strange. And trying to do some research and figure out, why did Anthony Hernandez approach the fight that way? The only thing I can think of is that he had been injured. He was supposed to fight RDR, actually, and he got injured and he pulled out of that fight. There wasn't much information about his injury, and so we can only speculate. And he didn't put his bad performance against Strickland down to an injury, but that could have just been not wanting to make excuses. He took the fight, he fought, he got knocked out. So yeah, it was a abdominal muscle tear, likely involving his obliques, leading up to the fight with Strickland, which may have been hampering his preparations. But Josh, tell me what you think about Fluffy Hernandez. Are we going to see the old Fluffy Hernandez? Are you not sure? And what can Gregory Rodrigues do if he is facing the old version of Hernandez, the cardio beast?
See, whenever it comes down to 5-round fights, I always feel a bit hesitant to give the 5-round fighter his due here, because we know that Hernandez is going to utilize his cardio in a very aggressive manner, as he always does whenever he fights. But given that this is going to be a 5-round fight, I think there might be a sense of calm here. Like, I know that sounds weird, because we know that Hernandez likes to go balls to the wall crazy with his takedowns, but he has to try and conserve that cardio anyway, because whilst Rodrigues and his cardio is a bit of a questionable thing these days, I do think that he can still catch him in either a guillotine kind of attack, because Rodrigues is a BJJ national champion in Brazil or whatever, and Hernandez is going to go for those takedowns. So there's obviously that sort of like reactionary response there. But I kind of echo the whole thing that you said, saying that Hernandez should be able to get the job done when it comes to this fight. His pace and his wrestling and all that stuff is great. His injury was a bit concerning back then when he was going to fight Allen and all that stuff, and hopefully it's all healed up and whatever. But if it was a abdominal injury, as you said, I believe, that also raises a few red flags, because we were talking about this before the recording. I mean, I think Rodrigues is going to attack the body. He has a very, very mean power side body kick, and it could tickle the liver. It could really rattle the solar plexus of Hernandez here. And so I do want to give RoboCop, or as you say, RoboCop, that one got me. His props here, because he does have a chance early on. But that's only early on. Like in the first 10 minutes of the fight, he should be looking like a prime candidate to get an upset here. But after that, if Hernandez does turn up the heat and does initiate those takedowns more often, we should be able to see the live odds maybe flip more heavily towards Hernandez's side, maybe. But yeah, that pretty much explains my placed bet there. Really, it's either Hernandez money line or RoboCop round 1 or 2. It's one of those two options here. And as you have there, if you want to explain your bet there a little bit, go on.
Yeah, no. Similarly to you, I do think that RoboCop sounds nicer than HoboCop. That sounds like he's homeless. RoboCop early. I actually will place a hedge just because I have a large Hernandez moneyline position. So my hedge is RoboCop to win in rounds 1, 2, or 3, and that's priced at plus 250, 3.5. So I placed a bet on that just to cover my stake on Hernandez, because it's quite large. I have like 3 units on Hernandez moneyline. I also played this minus 5.5 points. That basically means that I think Fluffy's going to win by 4 rounds to 1. If Rodrigues wins by, if Hernandez wins 3-2 on the scorecards, then that bet won't cash. So he has to win 4-1 or better, or just finish the fight, and that's plus money. So I just thought, oh, I'll take that because I like the idea of playing Hernandez plus money, and it's not like I don't automatically lose if it's a decision, because I'm not playing inside the distance. I'm playing a points handicap. So that was the sort of rationale for that. But yeah, I think we see it pretty similarly, and I think these are decent bets. I also can kind of understand people liking the Gregory Rodrigues money line. I think he has a lot of attributes that could cause Hernandez problems. He's very strong. He's got a very, very credentialed BJJ background, even though he doesn't really use that or shoot takedowns. I think the main issue for Gregory Rodrigues is pacing himself. Basically, he's so muscly. It's like not to gas out. And for Hernandez, we don't want to see that sticking and moving on the feet stuff. I know you've been training with Sean Strickland, dude, but just like get to his crotch, just sniff his crotch for the first 3 rounds, and then you can do what you normally do, which is lay it on thick. So we'll see what happens. We're on the fluffy train here. I should have mentioned he's the home fighter. He's based 45 minutes from Sacramento, 45 minutes north, so he's going to have great home support here in California. And obviously Rodrigues trains in the US, I think, and he's not like traveling far to the event, but Hernandez is literally the hometown favorite, so there'll be that kind of little boost for him with the crowd. Let's move on to, so this was going to be Will's fight. Will, unfortunately, is unable to join us today. Josh and I will try and give a breakdown of this fight. Put our bets up on screen already. We both kind of lean a little bit towards Spivac. So Josh has Spivac via points, and I took Spivac decision only. So my bet is basically if the fight ends inside the distance, then it's cancelled. Doesn't matter who wins. If Spivac finishes it, that bet doesn't cash. If Petrino finishes it, that doesn't cash. So it's kind of like a protective bet, because I kind of have this inkling that Petrino's got more finishing upside. You could argue Spivac could get a sub, but Josh, how do you see this fight going? This is like going to be maybe a pretty sloppy fight. What do you think?
It's it's gonna have me biting my nails for sure. I think we're gonna see either Spivac execute a perfect game plan and look like his former self, and I'm gonna get back to that later. But like, he has to wrestle, right? It's one of those things. But then again, Petrino has been a bit of a dangerous fighter to deal with, even though his last 3 opponents have been rather dull when it comes to name power, to talent, all that stuff. Spivac obviously needs to stick to his guns here, because if he deviates from any kind of I'm gonna strike and see what happens kind of plan, it's not gonna work. Petrino is a world-class striker. He's got power, he's got the light heavyweight speed and the athleticism to get the job done, and that's never good for Spivac. Spivac is a very hittable fighter. He's very much one that kind of absorbs strikes in order to get his way or get into range to get the fight to the ground. But that's where the props kind of stop for Petrino. Spivac is likely to be about 10-15 pounds heavier than Petrino here. He is a more traditionally built heavyweight in that he's just a big, fat, bulky motherfucker. And I just think he's going to use that weight as a advantage here. And I mean, I know that on the screen there it says 251 to 250 pounds. I think Spivac's going to come in heavier. I can't see it going any other way. I think it's going to be a tactical kind of play here from Spivac and his team. And being the wrestler, you want to be heavier. You want to kind of use that weight advantage to suffocate your opponents. So I feel like Spivac's going to prove to us once again why he's called the polar bear, and that's not because he's going to be extinct soon. That's because of his wrestling, really. So yeah, it's either Spivac wrestles or Petrino kind of gets his striking going and gets Spivac out of there within a few rounds or a few minutes, whichever. So that's my main lean there. What do you have, Dom?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't like dig into this fight. I was like curious to how Will was going to break this one down. I think he's leaning towards Spivak. Do you know that for sure? Or
Yeah, he does have one unit, Spivac to win at one at plus 150.
yeah, so I'm like as I've kind of come into thinking about this fight the last few hours, really, just thinking about the fight. I don't dislike the bet I've made here, although I kind of will see if I can cash it out because I've just started to have a kind of strong lean towards Petrino here because you mentioned the size of Spivak. I think that is going to be an issue, but I think that's mainly an issue if he gets it to the mat right. I don't know if you agree if that's true or not, because if Petrino has a speed advantage, which I assume he must have a little bit of speed advantage coming up from light heavyweight, he has pretty good takedown defense. So, he's got 79% takedown defense on UFC stats. But then we look into his fight history. He fought a grappler in Thomas Peterson, who's maybe he's not on the level of Spivak. I don't know what you think about that, but Thomas Peterson wasn't able to get him down, if I'm not mistaken. Let me look at the per round stats. I think that's right. Shooting takedowns. Yeah, he didn't get a single takedown, 0 of 8. I assume that if this fight is standing, Petrino should be heavily favored. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would absolutely agree there. Petrino's got such a sharp striking when it comes to any kind of distance and range. So if Spivac doesn't layer up his offense before getting the takedowns, he could be torn up on the feet.
Yeah, and currently the odds are not too bad on the Petrino money line. I was assuming, I don't know why, I didn't really look at the odds too much this week, that he was going to be like minus 200 in this spot, but he's only you can find him as like minus 140 in some places. So I'm kind of wondering if actually Petrino carries more value. I'm just wondering. I'm not saying he does because, like I said, I haven't really taped this fight. So Spivak decision only was kind of predicated on Spivak blobbing Petrino, like taking him down and not finishing him. But I'm not 100% sure. I think if Spivak does get him down, it's like you said, he might just maul him on the ground. Petrino's been subbed by some rubbish fighters. Well, I shouldn't say rubbish. He was subbed by Anthony Smith. That's right. But that was kind of a weird one, wasn't it? That sub. It was kind of flash sub in the first round. I think Anthony Smith was a big underdog. Petrino's basically, apart from the time he gassed out against Jacoby, he's gotten a lot of wins in the UFC. I didn't even realize he's got like 8 wins and 2 losses, which is pretty impressive. Spivak looks good on his day, but he's kind of losing who he's supposed to lose to and beating who he's supposed to beat. So yeah, I'm kind of leaning towards Petrino now without any strong conviction. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I feel like when it comes to the scoring criteria, we always have to give the striker the nod here, really. And if Spivac is unable to track down Petrino here, he is going to get chewed up. I mean, I have watched a few fights of Spivac's recently, and whenever he fights a superior striker, which Petrino is, he just looks like the most hittable fighter ever. Just like a walking punching bag, really. And so if Petrino is on the bike or is sticking and moving, we're going to see Spivac's face be a bit bloodied or bruised up and all that stuff. And given that Spivac is white as a fucking ghost, he should visually look like the more damaged fighter, which gives the judges more scoring, thing to go off, all that stuff. So yeah, Petrino is a good dog to take. I don't have the balls to take it, so good on you if you do dabble in that area. But yeah, it's going to be a weird fight depending on who executes the game plan more or better.
Yep, something to think about. I may add Vitor Petrino moneyline to my slate. For now, I have the Spivak decision only. We'll check if I can cash that out. Just don't feel like it's. I got it at plus 100, so it's not too bad. Just feel like it's not particularly good value. Josh.
Yeah, this is the meme fight of the of the week here. I'm gonna kind of like say before I get serious, hopefully serious at least. I have been a big fan of RDR for a while. I've watched his one championship run, and whenever he was announced to make his debut in the UFC, I was like, holy fucking shit, finally. So to see RDR in the UFC now is a great thing, but it's also a pretty disappointing thing because whilst he has had some great performances recently, well, not recently, but like early in his career, his losses against Borrello and who was the other guy? Sorry, Dom, help me out here.
His
It,
last.
it was a white guy. He gave up on the seat. I forgot his
Oh yeah,
name.
Brendan Allen. Brendan Allen.
Allen. Sorry. Yes, thank you. Ever since he lost to those two fighters, really, the aura of the goofy Netherlands Dutch fighter coming into the UFC and destroying everyone is gone. I do think though, compared to Dolidze, he has the ability to make this one a very tough, difficult, challenging fight for Dolidze. And there's a few reasons for that. Firstly, RDR has a very tricky grappling style. He does things in a quite unorthodox way in that he mixes the takedowns with a step ahead with in terms of getting the position for a submission. So he kind of wraps himself around his opponent whilst getting the takedown. It's a bit weird and a bit tricky for a counter wrestler to deal with that. And so I do wonder if Dolidze is going to be able to counter any of that by shrimping or by getting knee shields up or whatever, because no matter what, RDR is going to try and grapple. I know that people are saying that Dutch kickboxing is going to be a great lane for RDR, a great way for him to win, but I don't see it happening. I think RDR's striking is a lot more slower, a lot more easier to read or predict than Dolidze's. Like for example, whenever we saw RDR striking against Borrello, we know that he was getting pieced up. We know that RDR was getting pieced up. But whenever he went for a punch, it was like he was loading up a punch and then threw it. So Borrello obviously saw it coming, defended accordingly, and retaliated with some brutality. And that's where my concern lies here, because if RDR does go for a striking heavy bout against Dolidze, he could be easily outstruck. Dolidze has traditional kind of striking, but he also has speed and power. He's a very explosive fighter. And whilst both fighters are fighting at 205 this weekend, I'm just not too sure whether or not Dolidze will have that power advantage still, or that speed advantage. Sorry, the speed advantage still. Because obviously when moving up in weight, you lose a little bit of the speed. You make it up for it in power. So I'm not entirely too sure what Dolidze is going to look like, let alone what RDR is going to look like, right? But my to kind of like cap it all off, because I'm going back and forth here. I expect a knockdown from Dolidze. I have that as a bet here, or a kind of a bet, and that's pretty much because whenever RDR gets punched, he kind of loses his footing. He has the balance of a newborn like horse. You know how whenever you see like a fowl or a foal or whatever it's called, like a baby horse, get its legs going, they're shaky and they're falling all over the fucking place. That's RDR in a nutshell whenever it gets struck, whenever it gets hit. And so knockdown +1. I don't know what the odds are. I don't know if it's going to be a prop, but I will certainly dabble there. But ultimately, if RDR executes his game plan, which he most likely will, in my opinion, there's some bias there. I think he's going to win easily on points. Maybe not easily, but he's likely to win at least in terms of control time and maybe aggression. But again, a knockdown would indicate at least maybe a split round in which a judge sees it as a win for Dolidze or still a win for RDR, one of those things. So I'm a bit all over the place here. I picked RDR points here, but I do think Dolidze can get the knockdown. And yeah, you've got bets here going, Dom. So go on. What you got?
Yeah, admittedly, like a lot of my sort of theorizing around this fight and looking into it was under the assumption they were fighting a middleweight. So I still think the odds are wide here. So I was quite gobsmacked when I saw that Reinier Derrida was a -400 and growing favorite. So I think he's probably bigger than -400 now. So that's like 1.25 decimal odds. And you can find Roman Dolidze at like 3.3. He may even go up to like 3.5 by the time we get to fight night. And I think a lot of this is to do with Roman Dolidze's recent performances, right? I think it's fair to say he got like manhandled by Anthony Hernandez, and it wasn't a good look. Like, he wasn't competitive at all in that fight. That was at middleweight, of course. And then in his last fight against Christian Leroy Duncan, he got handily outstruck 5-1. So, which you'd expect from CLD. He's an elite striker. So I think people are quite keen to fade Roman Dolidze. That's why we have this line. But as you mentioned, Reinier Derrida himself has lost two on the trot and not looked well. He looked absolutely awful in the Allen fight. Quit on the stool famously, and didn't look at the races really after the first round. He had a great first round, but then he just sort of completely death-gassed. And against Baralho, he made a strong start, and the fight was competitive. So maybe I'd say that Derrida has looked better in his losses than Dolidze has looked in his last two losses. And overall, I agree with the sentiment that Derrida is better all-round mixed martial artist, but I don't think at the current odds or implied probability of 80%, that means, well, it's actually greater than 80%. We think that RDR is going to win this fight more than 4 out of 5 times that they fight. It just seems a little bit crazy. I think Dolidze is just one of these fighters that's not very popular, and he's not getting much love on the money lines. So yeah, I was happy to have a stab at the money line, and then I realized there's probably other ways to play this. So I put here the 5.5 points handicap, which basically means Dolidze doesn't even need to win a round. He just needs two judges to give him a round. So that's all he needs for that bet to cash. And that is still even money. So I don't think there's necessarily a finish here. And the reason I think there's a finish is because I think these men are quite evenly matched. Like, people have talked about Derrida and his size, and it's like, you're forgetting Dolidze is a pretty big, he was a pretty big middleweight himself. He has fought a light heavy before. I think he stepped up. If I look at Dolidze's career, he has stepped up to light heavy before. I think he stepped up, that's right. Short notice, he stepped up to face Anthony Smith and beat him. I think that was at light heavyweight. Am I telling the truth there?
I mean, it must have been a 205. I can't remember.
Yes, it was
being at 185. Yeah,
it was a light heavyweight. I just couldn't remember a second if it was definitely. Yeah, well, it was. So he's capable of fighting a light heavyweight. I'm not saying he's going to be bigger, but I think he will experience the same benefits of moving up in weight that Derrida will be experiencing, in the sense of less depleted, from the weight cut, feeling less drained, perhaps having better cardio, better chin. So I just think this could be a nice competitive fight. I think at first I was like, damn, I thought this was middleweight, but even though it's light heavyweight, I think that just increases the volatility. We don't know how good Dolidze will look, as we don't know how good Derrida will look. I'm happy to keep the money line bet, but I think if you're listening to this and thinking about betting on Dolidze, probably there are other ways you could play this from the prop perspective. And the Dolidze knockdown that Josh has mentioned, that's going to be pretty big plus money, I would expect. So that's also a good shout, because I think Dolidze hits pretty damn hard. I'm looking forward to see this fight. I think the money lines are definitely wide, but it's one of those things where probably Derrida should be a favorite, therefore probably should win the fight. But does he win it 80% of the time? No, I think it could be like 60-70% of the time. So that means there's value on Dolidze at this current line. Let us move on to the next fight. Yeah, this is the one I'm breaking down. I was originally going to break down Gage Young versus Stanley, can't even pronounce his second name, Dorsanville, I think it is. There's a newcomer. And I just thought that was an interesting one to break down, because we don't often get a debutant coming in with good hype. That fight is priced quite close. But in the end, I decided to go with the fight that has two, experienced UFC fighters. So I have more tape to go off, more fights to go off, and more statistics basically. This is going to be a striker's delight, I hope. Nasrat is a great striker. Chris Padilla is also a great striker. Slightly different techniques. So I think Nasrat is a slicker boxer, fights with a longer jab. Chris Padilla likes to calf kick. He likes to get up close with his elbows. He's got very good Muay Thai kind of clinch style fighting, and he does shoot the occasional takedown. Both men have incredible volume for the lightweight division. They both throw over 6 significant strikes per minute, which is very good. They'll be in the top 10% in terms of their divisions with their output. I'd say, Haqparast is slightly better defensively, so he moves his head a little bit better than Padilla. And I think that Padilla is just all gas, no brakes. He just keeps coming forward, keeps throwing. And I think one of the important factors to mention here is really the head kick knockout loss that Haqparast is coming back from. So I think it was October last year. So he's had a decent amount of time off. October last year, he was head kicked into the stratosphere by Quillen Salke. It was one of the nastiest head kick knockouts I think we've ever seen in the UFC. The poor guy was on the canvas for 1 or 2 minutes, completely unconscious. So there is that question mark over, what he's going to be like and how he's going to approach this fight. I think it would be completely reasonable to expect that he's not going to necessarily come out all guns blazing like he normally does. He's had a lot of wars in his time in the UFC. Actually, I wanted to touch upon some of his wars, because if we go to the next slide, well, talk about the bets first. Spoiler alert, I'm taking Padilla to win the fight, and if it goes to decision, I get a refund. I've also got a small amount on the Padilla money line. But as time's going on, I'm feeling more and more confident in Padilla at plus money as a good bet. I wouldn't play a lot on the Padilla money line just because I think Nasrat's a great fighter. And I think skill for skill, if this is a striking fight, Nasrat Haqparast should be winning a decision here on a striking fight. That's why I like Padilla decision no action. Padilla decision no action is priced very similar to his money line. And it just means if it goes to decision, you get your stake back. So it feels kind of like a great bet to me. The Padilla decision no action. I want to touch upon the Ribovics thing, because on paper, if you just start wiki capping this, you go, oh, Haqparast, like he beat Ribovics. I actually bet on Haqparast here, so I benefited from this outcome. But as you can see from MMA decisions, like the majority of the media scored it for Ribovics, and 74% of the fans scored it for Ribovics. There's about 250 fans who enter their scorecards into this system. Of course, it's incredibly, biased in a sense. I mean, who goes and uses these databases? It's not necessarily people who are experts at judging, so I would take it with a pinch of salt. But you can't then deny the Gordon outcome, right? I think I bet on Haqparast here, so I benefited from this decision as well. I think both of these fights took place in the Middle East. So, Nasrat is Moroccan, he's Muslim, so you could argue that is why we saw some strange decision outcomes here. But yeah, majority of the media, even more of the fans here, 83, nearly 84% of the fans basically saw Gordon winning the fight. This one for me was the one where I actually thought Haqparast won, and even on rewatch, I thought he won it. So, like I say, take it with a pinch of salt. Finally, I just want to look at their stats. You have to take Padilla's stats with a pinch of salt because he's only had 5 fights in the UFC. You can look at Haqparast's stats with a little bit more confidence. He's got a crazy number of fights in the UFC for a 30-year-old. He has about 15 fights in the UFC, which is good going for a 30-year-old. I think he came into the UFC when he's 23 or 24, if I'm not mistaken. So starting at the top column there, you can see the striking differential. You see it slightly favors Chris Padilla. Strikes landed per minute favors Haqparast. Strikes absorbed is much in favor of Chris Padilla. And I think that's one of the things that really attracts me to the Chris Padilla side generally. The fact that he's not taking as many shots, he's a little bit more, evasive, I'd say. That I find quite a good thing to have in a fight you're backing. Like I say, take these stats with a pinch of salt. Both men have great takedown defense. I expect a striking fight. I think all things being equal, I think Haqparast, if it's a striking fight, is the better striker. But I think there's, given the question marks about how he's going to perform after the knockout, given the fact that Chris Padilla is, streaking. You see here he drew to Markel Medeiros in his last fight. Many people thought he won that fight. So, yeah, I'd say you could argue Padilla's on a 5-fight winning streak here, beating some very, very good fighters. Josh, how do you see this fight? Which side are you on? Do you like Haqparast? Do you like Padilla, or prefer to just sit back and watch it?
I really like Padilla here. I think Padilla is a great dog to take right now. I think it's like 2.01 ish at the moment on Sportsbet. But I kind of want to dig deep into the stylistics here, because whilst Haqparast does have a strong boxing foundation, he has a raised guard. He's intelligent with his hand movements, his different looks, different feints. That's about where the good stuff ends. When it comes to Padilla, he could easily replicate what Serghei did in that fight. And I don't mean the head kick at all. I mean the setup for the head kick. The body kicks, the leg kicks, the body strikes, anything that comes down to the abdomen or lower is going to be highly advantageous for Padilla here. And we know for a goddamn fact that Padilla has incredible fight IQ. His whole style is predicated on him studying his opponents, right? He adjusts accordingly to what his opponents do. And so I have a few interesting reads here, apart from the leg kick, body kick kind of setup that Serghei did, that I think Padilla will do. I believe that Padilla, sorry, I can't say his name, but I believe Chris can do one thing in particular that can make this fight interesting, and then that's the naked elbow. So what I mean by that is that whenever we see Haqparast try and go on the offensive, he tends to lunge a lot. He tends to not so much lead with his chin, but he tends to lean forward a lot to do his flurries, his blitzes, whatever. So knowing that, if I was in Chris's corner, I think that we are going to see an intercepting elbow of some sort, because whilst he could obviously jab and strike and try and keep Haqparast away, Haqparast is obviously going to try and get into range and try and get into the pocket per se and try and get his volume going. And for that to stop, Padilla has to land the elbow. He is highly educated with his strikes. He may not be as technically proficient as Haqparast on the feet, but he is highly intelligent in the way that he uses his weapons, right? It's kind of like guerrilla warfare in the Vietnam War. The US crazy war machine that it was back then versus the guerrilla warfare of the poor, well, not poor, but of the Soviet-backed Viet Minh or Viet Cong, right? It's one of those scenarios in which we will see the lesser equipped but the more intelligent striker in Padilla get the advantages over Haqparast with his proficiency on the feet, his boxing, his well-roundedness on the feet and all that stuff. I picked Padilla to win as a pick on Topology, but my main lean here is over 2.5 rounds or round 3 starts, depending on which odds are better. But yeah, this is going to be a fantastic fight. I was so happy to see this fight be near even odds at the start, and so hopefully we see a banger, and hopefully my read is correct, because I'm really sold on Padilla getting the elbow in as a counter for Haqparast's boxing attempts.
Yeah, obviously as a Padilla better, I'm glad to hear your take, and I only played Padilla small, as you will see on the next slide. My bets, or both of our bets. So yeah, I already talked about Hernandez money line. I'm pretty big on the Hernandez side. I think a price of -150 is very fair here. This is assuming we get the Hernandez of old, who's going to shoot like 10 takedowns around and wear on his opponent, stay close and not allow those body shots, which Gregory Rodrigues will, most certainly attempt. I've talked about Hernandez, the points handicap, sitting at plus money. Talked about the Dolidze money line and the Dolidze points handicap, the plus 5.5, which means he only needs to basically win less than a round. Gage Young money line. I took this more as a kind of like a system play. I did watch tape on Stanley Dawsonville. Just think that young man is very talented, and I can certainly see why so much money came in on Stanley. The people who bet on Stanley got him at like plus 250, 3.5, and some people got him at 3, and now he's sitting like even money with Gage Young. I mean, he could very well beat Gage Young, right? And I don't know what the true line is, because the people that Stanley Dawsonville is beating up are complete cans. Like, not complete cans, but they're like guys with 3 fights, and he looks excellent destroying them. So it's pretty tough to make a call. And I just thought to myself, Gage Young has the experience, but Gage Young isn't really exceptional anywhere. He's like a jack of all trades, and that does worry me, because Dawsonville fights with reckless abandon. He's got great stand-up. He's going to have a big reach advantage. He marches forward, and he makes you engage with him, and then just when you're engaging, he takes you down and subs you. So he's very well rounded, got a great BJJ game, great striking. So I think Young's in for a tough night, but I think the fact that it's short notice, that it's a UFC debut, and they priced it even money, I was kind of like, oh man, you're forcing my hand. I really don't like Gage Young as a fighter. I particularly didn't like his showboating against Thiago Moises. So in the 3rd round of their fight, he started dancing. He started dancing in the freaking cage, and it was a split decision win. You cannot look more stupid than anything than that. So I kind of have a buyer's remorse with this Gage Young bet, just because I don't want to bet on a guy who starts dancing when he hasn't won the fight. Like, that's totally moronic. I'm sure he's going to look back on that and hopefully have learned something, but I don't know him personally, so I just assume that he's going to have learned that you probably shouldn't be freestyle dancing when you haven't won a fight. Padilla decision, no action. Like I said, I think this is great value. And listening to Josh talk about the elbows, the stepping elbows, I mean, if Nasrat hasn't fully recovered from that terrible head trauma and all the wars he's had, then Padilla finishing the fight, this seems pretty solid. I mean, I think Padilla is really tough. He's never been finished in the UFC, so yeah. If it goes to decision, I think that Haqparast has more decision equity than Padilla. That's why I'm only playing the Padilla money line for half a unit. And then at the bottom here, we didn't talk about this fight. Mason Jones. I love Mason Jones. I bet massive on Mason Jones against Axel Sola. I knew he was going to probably lose the 1st round and then come back and beat Sola. And he did that. But the Medeiros point spread here is very attractive. So Medeiros needs to win 1 round, or just get a couple of the judges to give him a round, or decision only. These are all plus money, which is incredible, right? So decision only, which means if Mason Jones finishes, Medeiros should get your money back. That's plus 200. That's 3.0. And then the plus 3.5 is plus money. So yeah, I think any of these are good value in my mind, as Medeiros is a very talented fighter, and he has a path to victory in kind of like stick and move and out techniquing Mason Jones. What have you got, Josh?
Yeah, finally I'm a little bit prepared this time, and I kind of want to go back to your bet here, one of your bets here, Dom. Young money line. I am a huge fan of what Young has become. His last fight over Thiago Moises was a big selling point for me. I mean, to get a win over Moises is pretty big, so I do applaud that bet there. But for my parlay, it's pretty boring or predictable. Dyer, I suppose, is a huge favorite, and she's facing the Aunt Killer in Elise Reed, and I call her the Aunt Killer because her last 2 wins were against Jessica Penne and Jin Frey, both old people. I was gonna say motherfuckers, but that's a bit rude. We live in 2026, and they'll be cancelled. Anyway, Dyer via KO points is only there because of the value, right? I don't want to play Dyer money line because that's like a waste of money. So hopefully KO points closes the gap a little bit. Padilla, Haqparast over 2.5 rounds or round 3 starts. I already covered that before. Wint Chapman. Wint is coming off a big finish on Dana White's Contender Series a couple of weeks ago. And I think people are expecting him to kind of replicate that same kind of performance. I am unsure if I want to stick with the round 3 starts now, because that might be a very, very stupid kind of like low value kind of lean. So depending on the odds that I get on Sportsbet, I might just go with the win to KO sub and see how that goes. And then finally, Judice via KO points. That again goes back to the dire leg in which I said it's mostly a value thing here, really, where Judice is such a heavy favorite that I think that we have to go into the props a little bit, the double chances. Now, for the alt bets there, Nzechukwueze round 102 is one that I kind of covered earlier with the UFC stats slide. I think Nzechukwueze is going to have all the advantages that one could want as a striker for as long as the fight remains standing. And that's up to Gaziev, really, if he wants to keep it standing. Petrino KO round 102 is there again because I think Spivac, despite picking Spivac, is a very hittable target. And so hopefully, well, not hopefully, I do want Spivac to win, but if not, it's covered by the Petrino KO combo round prop there. Rodrigues, I misspelled his name. It's with an S. I apologize. KO round 102 is one I already covered as well. It's one of those early round knockout advantages for the Robocop there. And then finally, Chavez moneyline. I did highlight that one on the UFC stats page, in which I said, for as much as Judice is clean and lives up to her name as crispy and whatever crisp striking, Chavez has the power and she has the aggression to make this one competitive. So maybe she can get the job done. So yeah, we'll see how we go. It's been a fun card to break down. So yeah, it's been good chatting to you, Don.
Yep, that brings us to the episode. Hopefully we'll join us on the next episode. We'll be breaking down what's coming next. Is it a numbered event?
No, it's in China. It's got Yan Xiaonan as a co-main event.
Oh yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, heads up on that one. Spoiler alert, I am betting on Song Yadong. Potentially a silly bet, but I can explain that next week. He's currently sitting at plus 400 or plus 500, depending on where you look. So yeah, I know Umar is Umar and probably going to win, but Song in China. Let's break it down next week. Thanks everyone for tuning in.